Hey guys, Metal Jesus here. Now I recently got back from the Portland Retro Swap Meet, and when I go to these expos, I usually carry with me a small list of things that if I see, I want to pick up. And a Japanese Dreamcast has been on that list for an awful long time because I want to start collecting Japanese Dreamcast games that maybe we didn't get here in North America, or sometimes the Japanese versions are cheaper than the North American versions. However, to my surprise, I did not expect to see a clear blue Hello Kitty Japanese Dreamcast at this swap meet. Actually, there were two of them. One of them was loose, that's the one I got, and then there was one that was complete in the box. That's fairly uncommon to see. So of course I had to pick that up. So in this video, I'm going to show you what that's all about, because in addition to just the main system being blue, it comes with a bunch of other cool stuff as well. And also I'm going to show you the beginnings of my Japanese Dreamcast collection. Let's take a look. So here is the blue Hello Kitty Dreamcast that I picked up. Now it's important to know that this was fairly limited run, limited release here. They released 1,500 of these in the blue. Also, they released a pink version as well. So I don't know if they intended that to be blue for boys, pink for girls, or whatever, but again, only came out in Japan and only 1,500 of them were made. And as you can see, part of the big draw for me is that they are partially see-through. That's such a thing from the 1990s that you had all those see-through iMacs, and of course you had the see-through N64s, and so this just falls right in line with that. Again, I'm not actually that big of a fan of Hello Kitty, to be quite honest. I don't know that much about it, so that's not why I bought it. I bought it because it looks really cool. I love that you can see the internal workings of the Sega Dreamcast as you're using it. You'll notice on the back of mine that I have a little bit of yellowing going on with the plastic. It's kind of unfortunate, but it's somewhat common for these consoles of this era. So maybe I'll try to work to clean that up a bit. And in addition to the console being blue and see-through, of course, you have the custom Hello Kitty controller. So you have the labeling right there, and of course it looks great. You can see the internals. And of course you need your custom Hello Kitty VMU. Now the VMU is the memory card that the system uses for saving your save games. But it's much more than that. It's actually like a little mini console that fits inside the controller. That's why it has an LCD as well as some buttons. So there are some little mini games and multiplayer games that you use this separately. And then we got the Hello Kitty keyboard, see-through as well. Now, I assume you would probably use this online, obviously, but also you could probably use it with games like Typing of the Dead. Now, in North America, we did get a Dreamcast keyboard, but this one is significantly smaller, but still usable. Now let's take a look at some games I've been playing on it. The first game I want to talk about is called Border Down. Now this is a horizontal shoot 'em up that was originally released in Japanese arcades in 2003. What makes this game kind of unique is that it has difficulty levels built into the gameplay itself. Now what I mean by that is that when you die or lose a ship, the game is going to move you down to the next more difficult border, that's what they call these levels, I guess, until it pushes you to a game over screen. So yes, this game gets harder as you die. Now what's interesting about that, you would think that would be kind of counterintuitive, but what it really does is make it so that you really want to stay in the green or easy zone for as long as possible because the level is longest there. It's a very brutal and punishing game, but shoot 'em up fans love it, and because of that, this is one of the more expensive games you can buy on the Dreamcast. This will typically go for $200 to $300. It's crazy. So if you see a copy of it and it's relatively cheap, pick it up. Next up is a game I've had in my collection for a little while now, and that is Guilty Gear X. This is the second game in the series. It was also ported to the PlayStation 2, and there's a Game Boy Advance version as well. And like the previous version, this is still a 4-button fighting game, so it's perfect for me. It's not too complex, It also has this tension gauge that builds up depending on how close you are to your opponent or if you're causing some serious damage. Now, as this builds up, you can unleash what's called an overdrive attack, or if it builds up all the way, you can do an instant kill. That really keeps players on the offensive and also on their toes. This is a hard game, but it's also really fun. Also, I have to just mention here that I absolutely love the 2D sprites and animation. I also want to mention that if you're curious as to why this footage looks so crisp and clean, it's because I am using the third-party RetroBit video adapter that they sell, which basically allows you to output to VGA, which is super nice, and as you can tell, looks fantastic. This next game, a lot of you Dreamcast fans are familiar with, that is Power Stone. Now, the reason why I have the Japanese version is quite simply, I traded away my North American copy a while ago, and now when I went to go buy it back, it's about $50 to $60, where the Japanese version is about $20 to $25. So you save money, but it's the same game. For those of you that don't know, Power Stone is a 3D arena-style fighting game. And the reason why it's called Power Stone is because you run around fighting and then you'll pick up these colored gems that randomly appear. And then after you get 3 of them, your character will transform into something even more powerful with the ability to dish out like heavy long-range attacks, or you'll be able to do really powerful grabs. Power Stone is a classic on the Dreamcast, and I'm thrilled to have it back in the collection. Here's a game I recently picked up. This is called Twinkle Star Sprites. So this is pretty unusual. It's a competitive shooting game. Now think of a mix of an arcade shoot 'em up and say a puzzle game like Tetris. The way it works is, for instance, in this gameplay footage, I'm on the left and the computer is on the right. And instead of trying to blow up everything on the screen as you can, you need to do combinations of shots as well as timed power-ups to damage your opponent. This is a pretty cool spin on the traditional shooter, but as you can see, I'm not very good at it. I just picked this game up, so I'm looking forward to playing it more. Oh man, here is a mouthful. This game is called Zusah Vasar. This is quite possibly the weirdest and most unique racing game in my entire collection. First of all, this is a Japanese Dreamcast exclusive. You can't play it anywhere else. In this game, you control a chariot being drawn by robotic animals. Yeah, it's kind of weird. And then depending on what kind of race, you're gonna race over land, sea, or air. Right off the bat, this game reminded me of Star Wars Pod Racer, if you've played that game, where you're not steering the chariot, you're actually steering the things in front of you. In that game, of course, is pods. In this game, it's the animals. I think probably the biggest complaint I have with this game is that the level design is just not that interesting, but the controls are actually pretty spot on, and depending on what kind of race or what kind of battle you're in, it changes up the gameplay significantly. It's definitely worth checking out. Here's a game I recently picked up called Frame Gride. This is by From Software. Now, From Software is going to be familiar to a lot of you because you played Dark Souls, Demon Souls, stuff like that. This is a mech fighting game that's very similar to another one in their series called Armored Core, but it's also fairly similar to Sega's own Virtual On series. The biggest challenge I had with this game is that when you launch it, it's going to ask you a bunch of questions in Japanese to decide what kind of mech you should be piloting. And so it made it really difficult for me because I don't speak Japanese, so I had to use the Google Translate app on my phone to even figure out what was happening. However, once I got into the actual gameplay, it felt right at home. It only took a couple minutes and I was having a good time. Also, this game has a lot of customization, so if you're into that, if you want to customize pretty much every aspect of your mech, this is the game for you. And then here's a game that is, well, technically not a Japanese import. It is actually an indie homebrew game, but it's got some Japanese on the spine, so I wanted to include it because I've been playing it recently and it's kind of cool. It's called Dux, D-U-X, and this is version 1.5. So this game has a bit of history. It started as an indie developed game back in 2009, and then it got kickstarted for a remake in 2012. While the original game was known for having some pretty great graphics, especially for an indie title on an old console like this, it did have some serious flaws that needed to be addressed. So what happened is they worked on version 1.5, which you see here, and this was released in 2014, again, for the Dreamcast. This contains numerous bug fixes as well as a more comfortable control scheme. For instance, they added auto fire, so that is huge for me. I love these shooters that have a button that you can hold down to just auto fires. While I only recently picked up this game, I'm looking forward to putting a bunch more time into it because I'm enjoying it so far. I also want to mention that you technically don't need to own a Japanese Dreamcast to play Japanese Dreamcast games on your North American system. For a while, I was actually using something called the Utopia boot disk. That's something that you can find on the internet, and you boot up your North American console with it, and then it will prompt you to put in your Japanese game. And as far as I can tell, it works pretty well. But you guys know me, I'm a collector, I want the real thing, and so I'm very happy to finally have one in my collection. I'd also love to know down in the comments, do you have a Japanese Dreamcast? And are there Japanese Dreamcast games that you think I need to have in my collection? I would love to know. All right, guys, thanks very much for watching. Thank you for subscribing, and take care. At the end here, I want to give a huge shout out to Kelsey and her Pink Gorilla stores here in Seattle. It is so awesome to walk into her store and just see a wall of Japanese imports, and not just Dreamcast. She's got Saturn, N64, PS2, a bunch of stuff like that. And while some of these games are expensive online, they're usually fairly priced in her store, and she gave me a hell of a deal. So I really owe her for that. So love to know what you guys thought about this video. Please subscribe to my channel, and thank you so much for watching.